I think architecture today is at a kind of confused moment. And I think what architecture needs is to be rekindled with the other arts, somehow to be inspired by poetry, music, dance. And so for me, this is very important work. I'm not doing this, sort of as a side gesture somehow to entertain myself. I think there's an urgency that architecture needs to be inspired by the other arts. And if you go back through history, it was always like that. Sculpture and painting and poetry, they were merged in the Renaissance or in the constructivist periods. We had these great constructions, but Malevich did Victory Over the Sun. That was a dance performance. Popova did the dance sets for Mayakovsky. I think you see these merging of the different arts as central to certain moments in culture that are very fecund and very productive and inventive.
Absolutely. I feel very similar about dance. For me personally, I actually am inspired by everything but dance. Isn't that funny?
I'm inspired by everything but architecture.
I am. I go to anywhere else in the world to get my inspiration. I look at architecture, I look at paintings, I listen to music, poetry, human relationships, universal thought, things that will connect to me into my deepest part of who I am, my true self. And then my medium is dancers, and it becomes a dance because that has been the language I have spoken my entire life. It's before English I danced. And so I think it's really important that right now everyone can have a company. They just say, get a company.
Right.
And I have been spending 16 years perfecting my craft as a creator of choreography. And I think back in the day when Martha Graham and Alvin Ailey and Mark Morris is one that I am truly inspired by living today and creating, because they're single vision artists. It's their voice, it's their ideas. And it's not that it's only them, because that's not what I'm saying. It's embracing the world around them and taking in other artists and collaborating. And I think if we don't intermix the arts and collaborate, we're going to close. Like, it's just going to close. The arts are going to fade out individually, and we're stronger together.
One of the interesting things I think about the connection between the arts is the possibility of one art influencing another today. And I was excited that when you came to the studio, we also had another project called Explorations of In, which was a kind of investigation of inner space. And when I showed you those models, it was exciting that you thought that could work for the possible departure point for our collaboration.
I love those shows.
Yeah, so
they were so inspiring. Do you remember I put my hand in it and said I want to be in there?
Right. And that was very exciting. And then I proposed right there in the first meeting, I said, well, what if we did, like my first class in architecture, there are 4 types of architecture: under the ground, in the ground, on the ground, and over the ground. Let's just start with that idea. And Jessica said, yeah, let's do that. So right from the first meeting, we had a basis for our collaboration.
Absolutely.
That built up more and more towards the dance, because the choreography came in sort of, in a way, fusing with the architecture. So we had to adjust the architecture towards the end to meet the choreography. But I think the success of the piece has to do with these things actually having an affinity already.
I also think when you saw the third movement on, you commented, wow, that's kind of a shorter, compressed version of everything, because you get the dancers under and then on it and over them at the same time. And it's really hard not to, like you're saying about space. I really thought in the beginning when I created under that I would keep the body as close to the floor as possible. But then about a minute into creating it, I was tired of being on the floor, and I felt like they have to come off the floor. And, while they're in relationship to a 22-foot opening, 24-foot opening of the proscenium, they are under. They're on the ground, so they're being 6 feet tall. They can stand up. So I gave myself that freedom. So actually in each piece there is on, under, over, and in.
Right.
In every, you can't avoid not doing the other.
Right. That's almost a kind of scientific proposition that inside each molecular structure is another version of that structure, that things keep getting smaller and smaller, or they keep getting larger and larger and larger. I mean, there's no smallest and there's no largest, which is an infinite condition. So in a sense, it's like Einsteinian in terms of its condition of space and time being one thing. And I think some of the shapes, a tesseract is a kind of interesting shape, because what a square is to a cube is to a tesseract, and it's a dynamic thing. A square is static, a cube is three-dimensional. You could say it's almost dynamic, but a tesseract has to be moved to take its shape. It turns itself inside out, so it's a dynamic thing, perfect for the dance.
Well, time is always moving, and everyone has a body. We're all physically able to make shapes, but dancers are obviously they're able to do things that I can't even imagine. We took your explorations of in, we actually explored the idea of an X at the end. And so you'll see a lot of the shape. But the X, if you square out and join the points of the body, you do make a square, and you can make a cube. And then from that, if you move it, it turns inside out. That's really hard to see, but it turns into something really beautiful. And you don't need to know all of that to watch the movement. I think you're transported through the music and through the images of color, and the set at the end is just spectacular.
To emphasize color in the end, we were thinking of the film of Tarkovsky, Andrei Rublev, which lasts for like 3 hours, and in the last 10 minutes, there's this flourish of color. So all the first 3 sections are in black and white, and then the last section's in color. So the emphasis on color is really, it's a contrast.
It is.
The black and white makes the color really
vivid.
Shocking.
Yeah. And it was interesting to take that concept of no color and transform it through costuming as well. So we start with the dancers in black, and they're barely there. You can barely see them. The lighting is really low lit. And then we go into the portion where we have your staff took the camera into your objects and showed us the inside, taking the audience and transporting us to where we would love to be able to go. And then we took our dancers and superimposed them into those spaces, which is really beautiful. And then on top of it, we've placed dancers in the real space, on the stage space, and so it gives you this depth, and the perception is just quite odd.
And another thing I think that we had right from the beginning is we started to talk about what music we might use, and I mentioned that in our class at Columbia we had certain musicians, certain compositions that had geometric potential, like Morton Feldman's Patterns in a Chromatic Field, or Yanis Xenakis, the work of Yanis Xenakis. And Jessica knew all these pieces and then some. So then there was this possible, let's say, the music connection to the shapes, the spaces, and the abstractness of the piece. That was in concert right from the beginning. And then you finally chose all the different pieces and how they would fit with the choreographical movements. But we had this platform of I would say geometric potential in compositions right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And Xenakis also had this incredible degree of conceptual strategy in the music, in the musical composition that somehow relates to geometry, I think.
Absolutely. And John Cage as well, and David Lang.
Right.
And Arvo Pärt.
And Arvo Pärt,
It's
right.
all the 5 that we've ended up with that are in the piece. The 5 composers are really special and unique in this geometric intelligence in their music.
Right. Not like this music here. I don't know why. This is absolutely what we didn't choose. This is
ballet class.
This is like
this is warm up.
The background is wrong, but that's okay. This is the real world. Here we are in the Harris Theater, and then they're practicing, and so we have to deal with it's like the street noises. If we were doing this on the street, you'd have the honking of the bus and all that, and that's where we are. And Chicago is full of that, right? Well, John Cage loved. He said, just be quiet and listen to all the sounds out on the street. That's a kind of music.
Well, and just watch the patterns of people walking.
Right.
That's dance.
Right.
Anything's dance, really. But the music, picking the music and making sure that there was an arc that I felt choreographically was correct. To make a dance in 20 minutes that says something that doesn't leave you feeling like we're unfinished in some way. And so I wanted to make sure that the music, through your favorite composers, that I could take them and arc them in a way that they fit together nicely as a puzzle. That was quite difficult for me, but we got there.
We got there.
Yeah.
But in the middle of this, when we did our fundraising, I remember and they said, well, what do you two think? And I said, well, she's going to be better than Martha Graham, and I'm going to be better than Noguchi. That's what we're aiming for, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
That's like very high level of
We're
aim.
there.
I love Noguchi's sets for the different Martha Graham pieces. They're great, but we couldn't do that. We couldn't just do a static thing on the stage. He already did that.
And so
it's
did
like,
she,
here we are in Chicago. You can't do what Mies did. He already did it.
Right.
You have to, we're in another time. And he believed in the new. You have to be, something has to go into the future. And I think that's one of the things I love about this piece. Whatever anybody says about it tonight, it's definitely about the future. You can feel that. It's using everything we can that we have at our disposal today, technological, and yet it's not cheaply futuristic at all. It has grounding in classical. Yes. It has grounding in time and the four seasons. It has grounding in, sort of basic fundamentals in different ways. And I think that's what makes it strong. It's like another planet. We went to another planet. X of N. It's beyond the solar system, outside of the galaxy.
Yes, it is.
Right outside of the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah.
Takes about 100 million years to get there. There's a planet called X of N, and that's what we're working on that planet.